Well, good morning, guys. I don't want to get out of my truck. It's cold and windy, and I got to work on the chisel plow. I'm just gonna have to go for it. Ah. So I was gonna go out and work some ground with the 8430 and the chisel plow, but I pulled up this morning and saw this. Looks like it just broke sitting there because you can see the imprint right there of where it used to be. So that thing just folded right in half. So I ran over to Grandpa's, got a couple spare sweeps. I guess I didn't even look at the rest of them. But I think that's the only one that's broken. So I'm gonna swap that one out, leave the rest of them on for now because we don't have that much more tillage to do. And hopefully I can get as much life out of the rest of them as I can. So I'm going to get the tractor started up so I can raise that thing up and let the tractor warm up. It's freaking cold out here. Ugh. She was a little cold this morning. This is working well. Shoot. Okay, I got it off. Here's the new one. It's not exactly new, but it'll get the job done. Glad that's done. Let's get this heat cranked up. Alright, so we got that sweep change out. And we are gonna move down the road. We got 24 acres to work. I'll explain what I'm doing after I get warmed up. Alright, we're out here to the field. I'll show you what we got going on today. The field is over there. There's about 24 acres of corn stalks. We got this chisel plow. Glencoe 7400 soil saver, also known as a disc chisel or a chisel plow. I know different regions of the country have different definitions of chisel plow, but in this area, this is what we call a chisel plow. It's got one gang of straight discs in the front that cut up the trash. Kind of see them there. And it's got these shanks. There's 13 of these bad boys. We got twists on the front set and straight points on the back set. So you can see these if you look at them from the front, if I can get to them somehow. I'm getting a phone call. Hold that thought. Alright, so as I was saying, I don't know if you can see that or not, but this sweep kind of twists off to the left. These are meant for burying corn stalks, burying crop residue. Almost like a less aggressive moldboard plow. It'll kind of pick up the dirt, flip it over to try and bury that residue. Then in the back here, we have straight points. This one is a little twisted, but they're supposed to be straight. These split the difference of the front ones and kind of bust up that compaction, help level things off. When we first got this thing, we were running twists on the front and the back, and we just didn't like the job it was doing. So we switched it to all points. Well, then it didn't bury enough trash. So now we've got twists in the front, points in the back. We kind of like that. Finally, we've just got this 1-bar leveling harrow. We actually built this harrow. This one's kind of twisted up in the middle, but it still does a decent job. This used to have S-tine cultivator sweeps that would just kind of level off the ridges. Well, all they would do is gather up corn stalks and leave piles everywhere. So we built this leveling drag, and it does okay. It's not perfect, but for what it is, it does a decent job. And we are finally going to be putting these Michelin Agribib tires to the test. If you're new to our channel, we just put these tires on before this fall. We had Firestone deep treads on them, and they were shot. Probably 5% on the inside duals, 10% on the outside. So we needed new tires. We'll see what these guys do. Dad worked some ground already with this tractor. I haven't had a chance to run it at all with these tires. He was mostly in lighter ground, so it handled it fine. Shift down a couple gears here. And this is a little bit heavier ground. It's more of a clay type soil, so this thing will get a workout. This soil saver really is a little bit big for this tractor, but it's what we got available. And most of the time we're running in lighter soils and it handles it fine. So we'll see what she does over here. All right, here we go. Lower my disc plates down a little more. All right, it's definitely pulling hard. I'm only in 7th gear here, and I can hear the turbo screaming. Let's see if she'll handle 8th. 9th? 9th is a little much. We'll stay in 8th. I just looked back and saw I had a spring came undone. It's pretty common for this thing. These springs are always falling off. I've tried to figure out a way to make this hook stay in there better, but I just don't really know what to do. So that's how it is on all of our Glencoe soil savers. We actually have 3 of these. Not exactly this one, but we have 2 of the older style ones. They're smaller, but they have that same drag on the back. So we originally were planning on no-tilling beans into these corn stalks out here, but we got to doing some budget stuff yesterday, looking at some price projections and what we kind of think we can do for yield versus price for the coming year, and we decided to put this back in corn. Now, the best way for us to do corn on corn is to bury the crop residue with this chisel plow or the disc ripper. We can come back in here in the spring, this crop residue will break down, hit it with field cultivator and plant the corn. That's the best way that we see to do it. We could also, if we get the right weather, we could get the anhydrous put on this fall, because this field is heavy enough that I wouldn't be afraid to put anhydrous on it this fall. Now the reason why we decided to go with more corn is because most of our ground is not heavy like this. Going through a waterway again. Most of our ground is fairly sandy, and we can't grow the greatest beans. We tend to be in that 45 to 55 bushel per acre when it comes to soybeans. Now that's still decent yields, but looking at price and what it costs us to grow corn and what it costs us to grow beans, we still feel like we can do better growing corn. Yeah, there's more input cost, but looking at what we're capable of doing yield-wise, corn looks like a better moneymaker for us. Hence, we're out here chisel plowing, making room for more corn. Now it's different for every operation, but for us it seems like 50 bushel soybeans is the tipping point. If we can do 50, we'll do all right. But this year our soybeans were a little bit less than that, so we still did okay, but we didn't do as good as we could. We didn't really reach that full potential. We just didn't have a really great growing season for soybeans. We don't want to gamble a huge amount of soybeans out there, knowing that we potentially might not get to that tipping point and not make a whole lot of money on them. If we knew for sure we could grow 50 bushel or better, we would plant a ton of soybeans, because the prices are going up, and $10, $10.20 soybeans isn't looking too bad compared to what we sold them for last year. But we just don't know if we can grow that great of soybeans. Corn, we're pretty consistent. We kind of know what we can do for corn. Our averages don't vary that much. Granted, this past year our corn wasn't that great, but that's kind of a fluke, I think. We generally know what we can do for corn, and it's more consistent. We feel safer growing corn. Well, so far these tires are doing pretty good. I'm getting about 4 to 6% slip on average. It will jump up to about 10, 12, 15% in the tough spots, but pulling this thing with those old tires that were wore out, this thing would just slip like crazy. So these are definitely a huge improvement. You're always going to have a little bit of slip when you're pulling something that just pulls hard like a chisel plow like this. And really this tractor is underpowered, kind of underweight for it, but it's doing a pretty good job. This is not very forgiving soil. It's pretty heavy. It's not like our typical soils. We don't have a whole lot of this heavy clay, but what we have, it's kind of hard to deal with. We're just not really, we're used to our sand. We know how to treat that. So I hate to even say this because I'm probably going to get grilled for it, but this field has been no-till for the past 5 or 6 years. Just corn, soybean rotation, and it's been working well, but the problem we're starting to have is this field has a little bit of a roll to it. It's kind of high in the back. It's got some waterways through the middle. They're not grass waterways, they're waterways that we farm through. And the water comes off of the neighbor and cuts through us and goes to the other neighbor and cuts some ruts through here. So they're getting kind of hard to farm through, hard to run the sprayer through. You've got to really pay attention so you don't go flying through a rut and get thrown out the windshield. So we had to tear this corn up this spring because we planted it, it got flooded out. So we tore up this whole field. That was the first time any tillage has been done in 5 or 6 years. We figured now is as good a time as any to get this chisel plow in here, fix those ruts, and just kind of do a reset on this farm. This farm is heavy enough, I think we can go back to no-till pretty easy and not do a lot of damage with this chisel plow. But it needed to be done. We're trying to get to no-till, but it's a difficult process, difficult transition. All right, so I just hopped out here for a minute, made a few rounds. We're gonna make sure nothing's falling apart, falling off on this thing. I apologize for the wind. It's pretty terrible today. Should have put my coat back on. Just looking this thing over, looks like all my sweeps are still in one piece. That's really weird how that one just kind of split in half sitting in the yard. All my springs are still hooked up. I think we're good to go. We're gonna keep on rolling. This field is what I call a long 20. It's a half a mile long by a 1/16 of a mile wide. It's pretty easy to figure out how many acres are in a field because a whole section 1 mile by 1 mile is 640 acres. So most square fields are divided up in multiples of 640. So it could be a half a section, it could be a quarter section. So, you know, 320, 160, half of a quarter section, 80, quarter of a quarter section, 40. Most of them are multiples of 640. If you go on Google Maps, go out to farm countries, central Illinois, Iowa, whatever, mostly the roads are laid out in perfect squares, 1 mile by 1 mile, and inside that is a 640 acre section. Now most of our fields aren't perfectly square. We do have a couple farms that are quarter sections, but for the most part we farm 40s and 80s. That's kind of standard for us. We do have some 20s. We do have a couple farms that don't really make any sense. They're kind of cut up by a creek and they don't really fit into that multiples of 640 category. They're just kind of however the creek went, it is what it is type of deal. So this one is half of a long 40. Long 40 would be half mile by quarter mile. No, half mile by eighth of a mile. Half by quarter is an 80. Half by eighth is a 40. Half by a 16th is a 20. Hopefully that all makes sense. So I've had this thing plug up a couple times. A bunch of trash gets wadded up in there. I think we might have the twists on backwards. It's throwing the trash at the walking tandems, so we might need to flip-flop those. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but that trash keeps building up. I'm going to see if I can get it unplugged. It pretty much fell out. We'll back up a little bit. Come on. There. It's pretty much unplugged now. Disaster avoided. It never fails. It always plugs up when I'm staring at my phone, swiping through Facebook or something. But I had a big old wad of trash get plugged up in there and made a pile, and I had to go back over and smooth it out. So I'm thinking if we're going to run this thing anymore, we need to get those twists so they throw the trash and dirt away from the wheels. I think that's the problem I'm having, but I don't have much left. I'm just going to fight it for now. And so far it's still clean, so it should be alright. Hey guys, so my camera battery just died. So I'm doing this last clip on my phone. Hopefully the audio is decent. That's going to be it for this video. I'm just finishing up my last pass here. The point I wanted to kind of drive home is, as farmers, we're always looking out a year ahead, 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead, trying to get that plan together of what crop we're going to plant when and where and all that stuff. So if we'd have got to spring and didn't have this chiseled, we would have said, shoot, I wish we would have chiseled that last fall, because it would have been nice to plant corn here. So looking out ahead, looking at the prices and our budgeting, we made that decision yesterday, and it makes it a lot easier to plan going forward. So anyways, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.